Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Opinionated. And I just want to introduce Dan Potts on Opinionated. How are you, Dan?
Very well, mate. International break is here. I'm missing the Arsenal already, but it's a good way to bow out into this interlull period, man. Pleasure to be on.
Fantastic. Listen, one thing we always do on here, we don't mess around. We get real stuck in. So the topic is, what do you really think of Mikel Arteta? So, Potsy, let me just go from the start. Manager came in, first managerial job, learning on the job. He inherits a cross of Arsene Wenger and Emery players. There's COVID. There's no fans at times. There's an FA Cup win chucked in. What's your thoughts on Mikel Arteta at the beginning?
Well, I never wanted him, KC. I never did, because I felt like we needed a proven manager that could win now, not in 5-6 years' time. I always felt like we've waited long enough for trophies, and I thought that when he first came in and was appointed, I did want to give him the benefit of the doubt, because for me, it was a tough job, toxic place, dressing room that didn't look very happy, a club that was rock bottom, that had been left by a legend. And we all saw what had happened with Manchester United once Fergie had gone. So I felt that we needed like Carlo Ancelotti, maybe a Diego Simeone, or Allegri, I think was at the time mentioned. Those were the managers I was looking at. And when we got Mikel Arteta, I thought, are Arsenal really a job where you need to be learning on it? For me, I needed someone that could come in and try and take this mess and move forward with it. So I wasn't a massive fan of the appointment. But what I will say is, in that first half of a season, he started to show me a bit of a style of play which was perhaps not the most attractive. If you remember going back to a three at the back with Tierney and Luiz, smashing the ball up to Aubameyang and Pepe to run onto, and it won us an FA Cup. So I thought to myself, fair play. But I think for me, it was always, where do we go next? And that was when my concerns started to come in, really.
Well, and if you remember rightly, Dan, I think the next season there was no fans.
That's right.
And we had a terrible run of games at the Emirates. And we nearly equaled our worst losing streak at the Emirates. And teams were coming there and beating us who have no right to come to the Emirates and win. But we were getting turned over left, right, and centre. You mentioned the dressing room was toxic. There was attitude. There was obviously the likes of Mustafi and Ozil had come in. Willian was obviously another player who jumped from Chelsea across that divide from West London to North London. And, Aubameyang. There was the Aubameyang incidents, Lacazette. What's your thoughts on that? Because you were right. There was trust the process, but a lot of fans were using that kind of against Mikel Arteta, trying to sort it out. So what was your thoughts on that?
Well, for me, I've been fairly consistent with what he's done off the pitch. I think it's been superb. I think removing the culture, the toxic dressing room that, let's be fair, was toxic under Emery as well as Wenger towards the end. I think he removed that pretty quickly. And I think he looked at who was going to be, I think he mentioned it as quoting, on the boat or off the boat. And for me, it was clear who was on and off of it right from the off. Now, it wasn't so easy for him to just go, right, you're all being sold, because you have to wait for transfer windows and clubs have got to want these players. But it was starting to become apparent that some of these players were just going to have to leave for nothing just to get them away from it. So I didn't mind that so much. And I've always credited what Arteta's done off the pitch. And I think that around the place, it's very, very good now. For me, where my concerns were, Kev, was on the pitch. And I remember starting to, as you mentioned, those games where we weren't even in the ground and we were losing to Burnley at home, Villa at home, Leicester at home, Wolves at home. And I'm like, I'm done. I can't see my team in a relegation fight. I'm sorry. I've never seen it. I will never accept it. I need to see change. And for me, I do think that there's an element of luck with Mikel Arteta, because for me, there has been people behind him that have backed him. Because at many other clubs, Casey, I wouldn't have seen managers being kept their jobs. He would have got sacked if it was Chelsea, if it was Real Madrid, if it was PSG. We can go on. But for me, what Arsenal have done as a board and ownership is backed him and said, no, we know we're going to go through rough times. And at the moment, we're going through that. But we believe in this guy and we're sticking by him. And I was starting to get frustrated and concerned by that because I weren't seeing much improvement on the pitch. But then in the back of my mind, I was always thinking, he says the right things. He's done the right things off the pitch. I need to now start seeing it transform and transpire onto the pitch, man. And that was my biggest concern.
And you know my saying, Dan, it's the players. Um,
Yeah.
how did you deal with the pain, Dan? Because obviously Aubameyang was instrumental in winning that FA Cup. Lacazette was a favourite. Didn't do he played well in his last season, but couldn't really get the goals. And then obviously trusting this, there's a process that has to go through, and there's a lot of pain connected with that. Obviously, Mikel Arteta, he inherited Pepe. You know, Xhaka, there was the Xhaka incident. He inherited Xhaka. What was your thoughts on the pain? Because there was a lot of infighting going on, Dan. You being obviously on social media as well, doing your shows, etc. What was it like for you?
Not pleasant. Not pleasant is what I would say. Not just from me personally. I can take abuse and I wouldn't be in this game if I couldn't. You know, you have to take that on the chin. It was more about the fact that this club was unhappy and this club was fighting again. And I'd already seen this with Wenger. I'd already seen it with Emery, and we were starting to see it yet again with Mikel Arteta. And I think for me, what it was looking was above, thinking you're in control of this. If you think it's going to get too toxic, I'm expecting to see some form of change, whether it be you selling the club, whether it be the board changing, or whether it be the manager changing. But we just sat on our hands and did nothing. The only time I've seen us protest was obviously for the Europa Super League, which, everyone went outside the stadium for. And once that was done and they said, we're not going to go into that, we carried on as normal. And Arsenal's results weren't picking up. And if you remember rightly, the first 3 games were in a relegation at the bottom, rock bottom. Our noisy neighbours up the road were top of the table. It was painful, bruv. And I think, to be honest with you, Casey, there was a lot of people that were starting to say to me, look, I know you ain't been a fan and I've been behind it, but you might be right here, mate. Maybe he ain't right for us. And that was when the question mark started to come in. Of course, then we kicked on and things changed, which is what we needed. But to ask what the pain was like, more than painful, because I've never seen Arsenal flirting with relegation, and I know it was early on in the season, but I've never seen Arsenal in a relegation zone. And you just never know. There's been big clubs, Forest, Leeds, Ipswich, Villa. They've all gone down before. I'm not saying Arsenal would have been one of those, but you always look in the back of your mind thinking, surely this can't happen, right? We're going to be fine. And that was my biggest concern, man. So to answer your question, painful is an understatement, bro.
Well, let me just touch on that. No goals, no points, nothing. We got slapped up at Manchester City, didn't we? 5. And I think then we went into an international break. And coming out the international break, I think we had Norwich at home.
That's right.
And it was painful those 2 weeks because everybody was letting off on us. So obviously that was so painful. Let's move it forward, Dan. Where are you mentally now? Obviously, what happened a couple of seasons ago, then last season, where are you mentally now? Can you take me along your trajectory from missing out against Spurs, then last season, going so close, and then now?
So I said to you in the first 6 months, I gave him some time. He won a trophy with Unai Emery's squad that I thought was pretty done and dusted, down tools on Emery at Baku, which we all remember. And I started to give him a bit of time. Then we went into that next season and it was 8th and 8th. And we're thinking, wow, is this the guy? Then what we did was we started to show a little bit of mentality change. And we started to build what I thought was the beginnings of a young squad. And I understood the plan and process. People take the mickey out of that word. It wasn't that I ever understood it. It was whether it was I thought was going to be able to be executed was my question mark, because I've already seen youth projects at Arsenal before go wrong with Fabregas and Van Persie and Ramsey and Wilshere, and they all end up leaving. So now we're on our 3rd stage of a youth project with Saka's, Martinelli, Saliba's, etc. Right? So we go into that season and I'm like, I think we can get Champions League football. I think it will be tough because of everyone around us, but I think we'll be okay. Then I see him throw it away towards the last few games due to injuries, and it starts to frustrate me. And I'm starting to look now thinking, how's that now happened? How have we thrown away Champions League football? And then we go into the next season. I don't ever think we've not been left short in any transfer window, but I don't blame Mikel Arteta for that. I blame people above him and the board because that ain't his job, right? To get all the players. It ain't just his job anyway.
He ain't
He
got.
has a say
It's
in it.
not his money. Yeah. Yeah.
He's not exactly that, right? So he has a say, but he's not in charge and control of negotiations, transfers, etc. So I was frustrated. So I'd gone into last season thinking, have we got enough? I think we've got enough for top four, but I'm sick and tired of trying to get into the top four. I want to see us go for a title, right? But if you asked me the honest question before the ball was kicked last season, do I think Arsenal were going to win a title? I'd have told you were smoking drugs, right? So when I got into that way of thinking, I'm literally can't believe what I'm seeing. I couldn't believe the style of play. I couldn't believe the football. It was as if overnight, KC, boom. Now, I understand that we added Jesus and Zinchenko and Saliba had come in to the side. And there were three elements of why that was. But actually, I thought the manager had learnt quite a lot. And there was bounce back ability within the side, which proves to me that not only has there been development, but mentally there's been a change at the squad. Now, the 21-year-olds that are now becoming 22-year-olds have learnt quite a lot in that 12-month period and have learnt very quickly. And especially this guy here, because for me, there was a lot of learning that he had to do because you couldn't be going through some of the stuff that we'd done before, playing people out of position, some of the in-game management stuff that, to be fair, and saying some games we've seen up to lately, but he's still learning. And this is the thing, learning on a job. This is why I was like, I don't want this guy. It's going to take years. But we believe it or not, are 5 years in already, or 4 years in already, right?
Yeah.
But I tell you what, Casey, he started to prove. He made me zip it. Basically, I was disappointed. I had concerns.
Potsy,
I'm like,
you zip it. Are you sure?
But I had to, because for me, I was thinking, right, Kev, top four potential. Now all of a sudden, we're still top, and we're going into a World Cup in the winter break. Now, I never saw that happening ever. I don't think anybody did. Even the pro Artetas, pro Arsenal's, pro processes, they never told me we're going to be top by the World Cup at Christmas.
Yeah.
So then I had to start really looking at why that might be. And I started to see the changes that were made. I looked at the actual first 11 and I thought, right, if we're going to go for this title, I still feel we need to get to January and look at where we're at, what we're up to. So I started to actually have a lot more respect for what he had done on the pitch. And I never really did that with Mikel Arteta. For the first few years, there weren't much that he showed me that I was happy with. I don't do 8th places. I don't really do 5th. Yeah. When I'm second, I'm pissed off. You know me, right? So I'm looking at winning.
That's right. Got to win.
You know, I've always been in mentality of you got to win. And I've always been like that in life. If I come second, I'm a bit peeved because I'm the first loser, right? That's always what I've been like. I always grew up with it. And people call me a spoilt brat because I grew up in the 80s where we had 89, 91. Then Wenger came in and we had the 90s.
Man,
I was spoiled, mate. I was spoiled. But maybe that is true. I accept that is true, right? But it doesn't mean I don't want it again. It's been 20 years without a Premier League trophy and 30 without a European trophy. So I need to start seeing success. And unfortunately, at the moment, Mikel Arteta has failed at the last hurdle, and he's done it again in the season just gone. Now, people can talk about and have a debate whether we bottled it or not for as long as you want. I don't really care, right? I think we did. A lot of people say, no, we didn't have the squad and we shouldn't have been there in the first place. Can have that debate. That's not really my point. My point is,
I want to ask you a question on that then.
Yeah, of course, bro. Go on.
Can I ask you a question? Do you reckon if Saliba was fit, we go a lot closer? I'm not saying we're going to win it, but do you think we go a lot closer?
I do. And listen, a lot of people will say, but Arsenal were conceding sloppy goals with Saliba in the team. Yeah, we were, but there wasn't the same amount of chances that we were letting go and sloppiness with him in the side. And I think the stability of this kid at 21 years old is one of the biggest reasons as to why we'd lifted in that season. He is, I mean, I say it now, one of the best defenders already that I've ever seen at the club. I've never gone wow with a defender since the likes of Adams and Keown and Bowles. I've had to go back that long, you know, Campbell's, Torres, etc. This guy is a Rolls Royce. And Gabriel, to be fair, is a monster, a colossus next to him. And I think they complement each other. But unfortunately, when Saliba was out, we didn't have adequate cover. I like Rob Holding for what he's done in the last few years. He's been a great servant, but I've never looked at him to go, right, we're going for a title, Rob. I need you in this team now. He'd be the one that I'd be saying, let's hope that he's a squad player, not a first teamer. So I think you're right, Casey. We would have got closer. Would we have not lost those games to Southampton, West Ham? We might have, because it was still sloppy even without Saliba.
Yeah.
You know, it's not. I can't sit there and say if Saliba's in the team, Ramsdale doesn't pass it out to the Southampton striker, because that still would have happened and they still would have probably scored.
Well,
So
my point is, Dan, and this is why I want to be a little bit objective with Saliba. He adds something to our team that nobody else can, is my point. I
agreed,
think he makes us better.
agreed, and I think he's been even better this year as well. I actually look at him now.
Second season, yeah.
And it's like, wow, you are even better now. Like, scary. I mean, I thought he was unbelievable at the weekend, by the way, against Man City. I looked at him and I just thought, you are insanely good for a 22-year-old. It's scary. But listen, I'll say this. In terms of Mikel Arteta, he proved a lot of people wrong last season. And do you know what's crazy? When you say he's proved people wrong, he's proved the people that doubted him wrong, right? Whether it be an Arsenal fan, like I had my concerns, or football fans. There's a lot of football fans that doubted him as well. But he's actually proven the people who believed in him wrong as well. Because the people that believed in him thought he would get us top 4. But he proved them wrong because he put us into a title race. So actually, there's a lot of praise he deserved from last season. My question mark now is he the guy that did what Brendan Rodgers did to Liverpool? And do we need a Jurgen Klopp to come in? Or is he the guy that can take us over the line and can win us something? Because there's been 2 or 3 opportunities now where he should have got us over across the line and he just hasn't been able to do it. For me, I need to see that, man. I need to see him win us the trophy.
Dan, you're setting me up perfectly for the next question. Do you trust the manager? Look, we know we want to win trophy, and nobody's got a divine right to win trophies. But do you trust the manager enough to make Arsenal be a challenger for the top trophies? Where you stand now, do you trust him enough?
So the reason I'm going to say no is because I've seen evidence of improvement. I've seen evidence of development. I've also seen evidence of him learning quickly. What I haven't seen is him deliver something with this team yet. Now, you can talk about the FA Cup if you want, but that was a completely different team. That was a team that no longer exists. So he's now spent, I think, close to £700 million on a team that he thinks is going to be good enough to win us a trophy, whether that be a Premier League, Champions League, or a domestic cup. I need him to do it now. I don't really want to see any more windows given or any more time given. The time is now. We got really close last season and we sacrificed a few trophies for the big one, and it didn't work out for us. Now, I'm not saying that if we don't win a trophy, you should go and we get somebody else in, because there's context to it, right? If we lose to Manchester City in the last game of the season across the line for a Premier League title, or Real Madrid knock us out of a Champions League final, I'm not going to be foolish enough, naive enough to say this guy's no good, get rid of him. On the other flip side to that, if we go out against teams where I really feel that we should be beaten, for example, West Ham in the Carabao Cup, and we lose to Huddersfield in the FA Cup, and we go out to Club Brugge in the Champions League, I'm not going to sit there and say, well, I still believe in this guy. Let's give him another year. I'm going to start to ask questions as to where we're going. Now, I obviously hope that doesn't happen, and I don't think it will. I think we will do well this year. But that's where I'm at right now, Casey. I'm still not sure Mikel Arteta is the 100% the man to take Arsenal to the top. And I think this season we're going to see it. This is his team. He's had enough windows. This is his squad right now. I don't think we've got any more excuses for if we don't deliver something this season. When are we going to then? Is it, just give him another window? Because I said it last season, this guy needs more windows than Microsoft, bro. I've never known a guy with this many windows, this amount of time, this amount of level. Do you know what I'm saying? So I've got to see
Dan,
him deliver it.
But Dan, we're in it now. We're in this season. You've seen us not hit the heights of playing wise, but we're winning games a lot more comfortable. We are. So obviously, what you see, January's coming. We've got 1 minute left. Tell me what you expect from January for Mikel Arteta now, because it's got to be a difference maker, right?
I think it will be if we buy 2 players that I believe would want to come and I believe are realistic, that would improve us. And those 2 players are Ivan Toney and Pedro Neto. Because then you've got a replacement in Saka that you trust. not the ones that he don't trust at the moment. Oh, we'll flick Vieira over there. Maybe Havertz will do a job. Nelson, maybe. Oh, okay, we have to put Jesus out there. For me, Ivan Toney and Pedro Neto come in and they give us firepower. They give us creativity and flair. And they also give us a drop-off, which is not that, but it's literally that. And I think for me, both of those players have got the ability to make themselves first teamers, not just squad players. So that's what I've got to see. And we did okay last January with Jorginho and Trossard, but it weren't enough to get us over the line. For me, I need to see that in January. And if we get to a stage in the new year where we're in a good position and those two come in the door, what's that going to do to everyone around us? They're going to be scared, Kev, 100%. So that's what I want to see, bro.
Well, Dan, on that note, this is Opinionated, and that's where we finish. We could go on this for another hour, but everyone, we're going to leave it there. Thanks so much, Dan.
Always, man. Pleasure.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.